The year is 2025. Europe finds itself at a crossroads. The continent, once a beacon of peace and prosperity, faces a new wave of challenges. The post-Cold War era of relative stability is fading. New threats are emerging, testing the very fabric of European security. From the east, a resurgent Russia flexes its military might. Cyberattacks, originating from both state and non-state actors, threaten critical infrastructure. Terrorism remains a constant worry, casting a shadow over daily life. These emerging dangers are forcing Europe to confront a difficult question: how can it ensure its security in an increasingly volatile world? The answer, many argue, lies in unity and strength. The European Union, often criticized for its bureaucratic sluggishness, must find a way to present a united front against these threats. This means closer cooperation on defense matters, increased military spending, and a willingness to assert itself on the global stage. But such a shift raises complex questions about national sovereignty, historical sensitivities, and the very identity of Europe. The debate is particularly charged in Germany, a nation haunted by its past, but increasingly aware of its responsibility in shaping the future of Europe. For decades, Germany has been hesitant to embrace a more assertive military role. The shadows of World War II loomed large, shaping a national psyche wary of military power. But as the security landscape transforms, Germany is being forced to reconsider its position. The question is no longer whether Germany should play a greater military role, but rather what that role should look like and what implications it holds for Europe as a whole. The story of Germany's military posture begins in the aftermath of World War II. A devastated nation, defeated and occupied, faced the daunting task of rebuilding from the ashes. The horrors of the Nazi regime, the atrocities committed in the name of German expansionism, left an indelible mark on the national consciousness. There was a collective understanding that militarism had led Germany down a dark path, and a new approach was needed. The newly formed Federal Republic of Germany, established in 1949, embraced a policy of military restraint. The Bundeswehr, the German armed forces, was created as a strictly defensive force, tightly integrated into the NATO alliance. Its primary purpose was to contribute to the collective defense of Western Europe against the Soviet threat during the Cold War. Germany's economic miracle, fueled by the principles of social market economy and hard work, took center stage. The nation poured its resources into rebuilding its infrastructure, fostering innovation, and establishing itself as an economic powerhouse. This focus on economic growth and international cooperation, rather than military might, defined Germany's foreign policy for decades. The country became a staunch advocate for diplomacy, multilateralism, and peaceful conflict resolution. It actively sought reconciliation with its former enemies, playing a key role in the process of European integration. However, the end of the Cold War brought about a new set of challenges. The collapse of the Soviet Union, while welcomed by many, also created a security vacuum in Eastern Europe. Ethnic conflicts erupted in the Balkans, testing the limits of European intervention. The rise of globalization, while bringing about economic opportunities, also created new vulnerabilities. Terrorism, cybercrime, and the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction became pressing concerns. As the 21st century unfolded, Europe found itself facing a rapidly changing security environment. The old certainties of the Cold War era, with its bipolar power structure and clearly defined ideological lines, had vanished. In their place emerged a more complex multipolar world, characterized by a multitude of actors and interconnected threats. One of the most significant developments was the resurgence of Russia under President Vladimir Putin. After a period of relative decline following the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia began to reassert itself on the world stage. It modernized its military, engaged in assertive foreign policy initiatives, and sought to re-establish its sphere of influence in its near abroad. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and the ongoing conflict in eastern Ukraine sent shockwaves through Europe, shattering the illusion of lasting peace on the continent. At the same time, the threat of terrorism, which had already reared its ugly head in the 9/11 attacks and subsequent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, became even more complex and diffuse. The rise of ISIS, its brutal tactics and sophisticated use of propaganda, highlighted the evolving nature of terrorism and the challenges of combating it. Europe, with its open borders and diverse societies, became a prime target for terrorist attacks. Beyond these traditional security threats, Europe also faces a range of non-traditional challenges. Cyberattacks originating from both state and non-state actors pose a significant threat to critical infrastructure, financial systems, and democratic institutions. Climate change is already contributing to mass migration, resource scarcity, and political instability, further exacerbating existing tensions. These interconnected and multifaceted threats have exposed the limitations of Europe's traditional security architecture. NATO, while still the cornerstone of collective defense, has struggled to adapt to the new security environment. The European Union, despite its economic might, has long lacked a coherent and effective common defense policy. Section 4. Awakening a Sleeping Giant: Germany's Military Reawakening. The confluence of these emerging threats has forced Germany to confront a difficult question. What is its role in this new world order? For decades, Germany has been content to remain a civilian power, focusing on economic strength and diplomatic influence rather than military might. However, the changing security landscape, coupled with pressure from its allies, has led to a gradual shift in Germany's strategic thinking. In recent years, Germany has taken concrete steps to bolster its military capabilities. In 2014, following Russia's annexation of Crimea, Germany announced a significant increase in defense spending, reversing years of decline. The goal was to modernize the Bundeswehr, improve its readiness, and enhance its ability to respond to a wider range of threats. This included investments in new equipment, such as fighter jets, tanks, and submarines, as well as an increase in the size of the armed forces. The debate over conscription has also resurfaced. Germany suspended compulsory military service in 2011, opting for a professional army. However, some voices, particularly within the military establishment, argue that reintroducing conscription is necessary to ensure the Bundeswehr has sufficient personnel and to foster a stronger sense of civic duty among young Germans. This shift towards a more assertive military posture has not been without its critics. Some argue that it risks undermining Germany's commitment to pacifism and multilateralism. Others worry that it could provoke Russia or lead to a new arms race in Europe. However, proponents of a stronger German military argue that it is necessary to ensure Germany's own security and to contribute to the collective defense of Europe. Section 5. A Dream of Unity: The Quest for a European Army. The debate over Germany's military role is inextricably linked to the broader discussion about European defense integration. For years, the idea of a European army, a unified military force capable of acting independently of NATO, has been floated as a way to strengthen Europe's security posture and reduce its reliance on the United States. Proponents of a European army argue that it would allow Europe to pool its resources, eliminate duplication, and project power more effectively on the global stage. They point to the European Union's collective economic weight and its shared values as arguments for a more integrated approach to defense. They also argue that a European army would enhance Europe's strategic autonomy, giving it greater flexibility to act in its own interests without relying on the United States. However, the path towards a European army is fraught with obstacles. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of political will among member states. Many countries are reluctant to cede sovereignty over their armed forces or to commit to the level of funding that would be required to create and maintain a truly effective European army. There are also concerns about how a European army would be structured, commanded, and deployed. Despite these challenges, the idea of a European army has gained some traction in recent years, driven in part by the changing security environment and the perceived unreliability of the United States under the Trump administration. The European Union has taken some modest steps towards closer defense cooperation, such as the establishment of the Permanent Structured Cooperation, or PESCO, framework in 2017. PESCO allows groups of EU member states to cooperate on specific defense projects. However, it remains to be seen whether these initiatives will eventually lead to a truly integrated European army.